Order for the Bartlett Economic Development Commission for the February 10th, 2014 year 2014 meeting. May we have a roll call?
Jerry Cabasso.
Present.
Cecilia Green.
Here.
Donna Weir. Robert Perry. Nayan Metha.
Yeah.
Jim Russell.
Yeah.
Jeff Petro. Here. Tracy Smadilla.
Here.
Mike Sobel. Here. We have a quorum.
Okay, the next two items on the agenda will be first, the approval of the December 9th, 2013 meeting minutes, which were deferred at the last meeting. Do we have a motion to approve, or does anybody want to discuss any of it?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Do we have a second to that, Jim's motion?
Second.
Motion approved. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Now we have the approval of the January 13th, 2014 meeting minutes. Any discussion? Any motion? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second to Jim Russell's motion?
I second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Aye.
Fifth agenda item would be the update on the downtown enhancements recommendations made by the EDC recently. Tony, you want to update us on that?
Gladly. Thank you, Jerry. And I'm going to veer off of the written memo just a little bit, and that's because in an effort to get the packets done in a more timely fashion this month, this was drafted the day before the Village Board Committee had their discussion, which was last Tuesday. So I'm going to brief you on what transpired last Tuesday. The Village Administrator, Valerie Samuels, updated the Village Board on the status of the short-term EDC recommendations. If you recall, they had looked at those
Tony,
back. Yeah.
Are you on? It's
Yeah.
soft.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll speak closer. Thank you. We had gone over the short-term recommendations at the December meeting, and if you recall from last month, the staff was given some direction to follow through on these, and they were all essentially in process. So what they talked about last Village Board meeting last Tuesday were the medium-term recommendations, and those were broken down into subgroups. The first subgroup was related to signage and code enforcement in the downtown area. A suggestion was made also to contact the Chamber of Commerce about their members, if those businesses that are members of the Chamber in the downtown area, to give them reminders to keep their yards and facades clean and in code compliance. In terms of the signage, staff will be working with the Park District to identify specific spots where wayfinding signage can be placed along the bike paths to notify riders of the downtown and other commercial locations. If you remember, probably about 6 months ago or so, 6 meetings back, Terry Witt came and showed renderings of wayfinding signage that could be used on bike paths. So they said they found that agreeable, and that's something that we're going to be pursuing as well as one of the medium-term action steps. Staff is also going to be preparing potential amendments to the sign code to allow for an administrative change to a unified center sign plan, to allow more time for seasonal and special event banners, to possibly add digital signs, and to increase sign size. So if you also recall, one of the recommendations in the medium term was to study the current sign code and to make possible amendments to that to make it more business friendly, if you will, but to increase the size that would be allowable and make it somewhat less cumbersome for a shopping center or property owner to go through the amendment process. So that becomes more of an administrative process rather than several months of public hearings for something like that. Staff will also contact IDOT, excuse me, I've been talking a lot today, about allowing a mural-type directional sign to be placed on the sound wall at Route 59 and West Bartlett Road. If you recall, that type of suggestion was made probably back in June or July by Bruce Suffern when he came to the meeting, and also Sean from TL's. They were talking more about a large, bless you, perhaps digital sign on the corner, or something kind of like a big, fancier sign. But as we did the research and the calls, we found that, again, as we stated in some of these meetings, Route 59 is controlled by the state of Illinois through IDOT, and also there's some private properties there, so we can't just place that type of sign on that corner necessarily. But we are going to do research to see if we can't make use of that existing sound wall at that corner. That could be a good location for an attractive sign pointing towards the downtown area. The second subgroup of recommendations was related to traffic and pedestrian circulation and safety. At this time, the village board, the direction they provided was to wait until a contracted traffic analysis is completed. At one of the 2 meetings ago, the village board approved a contract to study specifically the traffic patterns throughout the downtown area. So they're addressing that directly. That's something that's in process already. The third subgroup was related to extending the street light banners and flower baskets along Oak North up to Route 20. If you recall, the way that was phrased in the medium-term recommendations was to extend the West Bartlett Road corridor plan, beautification, and all the amenities that they did that you can see from the downtown out towards Route 59 up north. And also, as you recall, that was a very pricey endeavor and took years of planning, and grants were obtained as well to be able to do that beautification project. So since this is a large capital expenditure and related to an STP grant application with a local share of cost, meaning you can't get grant money to fund the whole thing, you have to have the local share as well. Staff is exploring, again, that grant opportunity, and this project would have to be included in a future capital budget proposal. So that's not as you recall, not a 0 to 6 month process, but more a 6 month to 2 year process. And it can take that long just to get into the grant cycle as well. The 2 items related to the formation of an arts commission and an arts center was postponed to a future date, and staff was directed to supply the previous arts center analysis and supplemental information for that meeting. So when that comes back up in front of the board, they're going to take a look at a study that was previously done. Cecilia reminded us that was done in approximately 2007. The village board hired an art consultant specifically who did a study of the area when the village was studying the feasibility of doing a cultural and arts facility across the street from here.
Tony?
Yes.
I also don't think they had enough information on what a cultural arts commission is and what it does. They passed.
If we had something like that, that'd be good to pass along to us.
Yeah, they passed over that and just started.
But they weren't really the meeting when they weren't really. We were surprised that they went that far and discussed all those things. They were really only going to talk about those first 4 items.
Yeah.
But they kept going, so that's why some of the background stuff wasn't there.
Right.
So that's why they asked, we need to see some more of this background stuff. So if you had something like that, that would be good.
Well, I sent Tony a web page for surrounding villages that have arts commissions, and it described on there what their duties were. So maybe if he just printed out those and included those in the packets.
Right, thank you. That was forwarded, you sent that to a number of people on
Right.
staff, and that was forwarded around
Yeah.
internally.
So that could be provided so they'd understand
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah, and thank you. And moving along and summarizing the last part, like Jim said, at this meeting, what was scheduled was to talk about the first subgroup, but again, the administrator went through all of the medium-term recommendations, which was good because we got feedback on a number of items. So the fourth subgroup was really just an item of one, was a TIF district in the downtown area. And as you recall from some of our discussions, a lot of these projects that we talk about are capital intensive, including our center and streetscape and traffic realignments and things like that. So one of the things we discussed was forming a new tax increment financing district in the downtown area. Staff explained that this requires a third-party objective analysis from an outside consultant that is estimated to cost between $20,000-$25,000. I've spoken to many TIF consultants in the past, and we've done one in the past few years, and essentially the cost of the TIF study depends on the complexity of the TIF, as you might imagine. The number of properties involved, the size of it. They will go not only block by block, but property by property to do an analysis. It has to be done by an outside consultant, so it's not a staff person or the Economic Development Commission saying, yes, this should be a TIF district, but it has to be documented to meet a number of state criteria to be eligible. So, and also it takes a number of months, and they work with staff. We provide them the information they request, and it's a process that can take 3 to 4 months just to do the study. So staff was directed to supply the committee with background on the previous TIF. As you recall, there was a TIF adopted in 1986 that ran for 23 years. So we were directed to supply background on the previous TIF, the TIF redevelopment plan, and information on the creation of TIF districts for an upcoming committee agenda. And as of now, unless I'm mistaken, that discussion should be happening next Tuesday at their committee meeting. Okay. So we're going to provide them 2 different fact sheets that I have that are very good primers on TIF districts. The Downtown TIF Closeout Report from 2011 that lists all the accomplishments of the original Downtown TIF, a spreadsheet of the TIF rebate program, and also, I guess I said earlier, the original redevelopment plan that was done by Tesca Associates in October 1986. So that's where we're at. There's a lot of information, but they're moving forward step by step on each one of the recommendations, discussing them, giving us feedback, and in turn, we're coming back and providing more and more information for them to consider. So, like I said, they should be discussing the possibility of doing a downtown TIF feasibility study at next Tuesday night's meeting. Are there any questions on any of the specific items?
Okay, next item on the agenda would be...
Sorry, excuse me, I just had one question
Yes.
regarding that, Tony. Regarding that previous TIF study, is that something that would be available to the commissioners so that we might have a more holistic view of what the TIF history of
Yes.
the city has been?
We
for the
gave
village?
it, I know it was a lot of packets ago. We had it in the July packet, but I have scanned it. If you don't have, you recall you were getting very, thick packets month after month last year. We had one night where we gave the original TIF study and I think 2 other TIF documents. But I can provide that again if you'd like.
Yeah, I probably have it then if it was provided at the July
Yeah.
meeting, so I'll just go back and review that.
It was interesting looking at it because a lot of the items that were in the original TIF study, they're going to end up being the same if we do another one. And I'm not going to go point by point by
Sure.
point and do a TIF analysis, but if 50% or more of the buildings are 35 years or older. That was true in 1986, and it's true in 2014.
They're just a
I
little
think we have a
older.
higher vacancy rate now than we did back then. Excessive vacancy is considered one of the blighting factors. Any code, buildings with code violations, and not necessarily just obvious code violations like the Lucky Jack's property, but buildings that don't meet current accessibility. Items like that are all taken into consideration. So it's my opinion that the downtown area will qualify as a TIF district if the study goes forward.
Great.
Yeah, we'll send it out again, too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Tony, you want to give us an update on your business visitation?
Yes.
Through
Last month, a few of
Mason?
thank you. Last month, a few commissioners mentioned it, and this is usually something that happens more earlier in the year, and the first one was done in January. There was another one scheduled for a day or two later that had to be canceled at the last minute, and I'm working on rescheduling it. So Commissioner Smodilla and I visited with the owner of Mathnasium last month. They've been there for just about 1 year. That's about when I like to visit a business after they've been open for a year or so, maybe a little longer, just to get a feel of how things are going. And so for those of you who don't know this business, it's right across the street from the Jewel. And as the name suggests, it's a math gymnasium. It's not just a math tutoring place. They have small classes as well. So Anjali Gupta is the owner, and they have co-owned another franchise in Schaumburg for 2 years at the time, and we're looking to expand this way. They have a lot of customers in the area between Bartlett and Schaumburg, and further south and further east as well. So they figured they could do well by serving this area by expanding into Bartlett. And they also had the feeling that a lot of families in this area would want math tutoring and classes beyond what were being offered within the school district. So they employ 15 people between the two locations, just back and forth between Schaumburg and Bartlett. They offer expert math tutoring for 1st through 12th graders. They go through a comprehensive evaluation, then are given a customized learning plan. The tutoring and the mini classes, they call them, are for not just for students who are struggling to keep up, but also for people performing right at grade level who want to make sure that families that want to make sure their students don't start falling behind, as well as for gifted students who want to take either math classes or tutoring that are above and beyond what would be offered at their school. So she explained that her business is like a gymnasium for math, and most of their customers become members. So it's like having a gym membership, but for math.
When do they go? Does they go like after? This is in addition to school, right?
This is, yes, Commissioner Russell, this is in addition. This is after school, this is weekends, this is during Christmas break, spring break, summer. Yeah. Their big challenge, when we ask them what some of their challenges are, we always ask at these meetings, the drive-by traffic isn't as high as it would be on Route 59. Ironically, I worked with them at the very same month and very same time that another tutoring business was looking, called Enopi, and they both looked at the same spot there by now the empty Dominic store, and Enopi ended up over there, and these folks ended up across from the Jewel. So it's not as high traffic area, so they rely a lot on their marketing. As you might imagine, they're targeting students and schools. So we discussed marketing like print advertising, social media, and hosting game nights. This was about a month ago, but she told us she was going to do a postcard campaign at the time, and Commissioner Smodilla was kind enough to offer assistance with making contact with some of the administrators at some of the schools. So I'm hoping that proves fruitful. They wanted to become more involved with the community, and we suggested a number of ways, including getting involved with Heritage Days, National Night Out, and other local events where they can get their name out there. When we asked her about her experiences during opening, this was a meeting where she was concerned about having to provide architectural renderings for some of the build-out that they did. They added an extra office room and really did some minimal build-out. We explained Bartlett's building code that, as a lot of you are aware of, requires architectural plans for essentially any type of reoccupancy. So that's something that we made note of, and we said we would share that information and pass it along. She further questioned the sign code, specifically regarding window signage, and we were able to tell her that the EDC heard the same type of testimony and made that one of the recommendations that the village board is considering. So she was pretty glad to hear that, and at this point, time will tell, but it looks like something that has some momentum at the village board level. They haven't yet joined the Chamber of Commerce, and we discussed various ways that the Chamber can help promote their business. One thing that she noted was she really thanked us for coming out. She mentioned that in Schaumburg, having been there for 3 years, nobody's come out from the village, and she was thankful for that, to be able to put some of her thoughts down and for us to share it. So I think it's a great business, complementary to a lot of the other businesses in the town, and we're glad to have them. Any questions or anything you want to add about the visit, Tracy?
Is this visits by visits to businesses makes them any expectations from us, or it's just a goodwill visit?
No,
once the visit is made, I guess they must be also setting up some sort of an expectations. Am I right?
They did.
And are we then going step forward to help one way or other, as you mentioned, like marketing, some of the suggestions, then some of the coordinations with the village board, also sort of things like EDC play a role?
Yes. I didn't have it on the agenda for tonight, but we put it on the Discover Facebook page. They're actually pretty active with that. They had their 1-year anniversary party a few Saturdays after we met with them. They wanted us to put it on there. That's actually the contact that was made when I scheduled this meeting, was for us to put the information on the Discover Bartlett page, which we did. I'm going to assume Commissioner Smadilla had made those connections or is working on making those connections.
That was taken care of, and the primary contact who'd been out of town said she'd be calling her when she returned from wherever she was on February 5th. So Anjali is aware of that. They've been connected, so.
That's good.
Yeah, we always follow up right away. And the events, a lot of the events are coming up in the coming months. And these are typical questions and concerns of a lot of businesses that I speak with. They do have the opportunity to get more involved. There are quite a few opportunities throughout the year.
I'm sure.
So it's a little bit on them, too, to keep up on when some of these events are coming up, or we can send reminders. I'm at the Taqueria often, so I can come in, it's next door to them, and remind them of some of these events coming up.
Is that in the same plaza where we went last year?
That is. There's a UPS store on one. That's the one that got canceled, was a UPS visit. And there's the new taquerias in there, and Techies, right across from the Jewel.
Well, one thing that I'd like to comment on about Ms. Gupta's business is that, and especially in her ability to market, she's got a fairly robust marketing program, and she's got a pretty expanded demographic to include not just Bartlett, but as is indicated in the report here, she's got a second location in Schaumburg. But she and her partner have also reached out to the surrounding areas, such as Carroll Stream and West Chicago and Wayne and St. Charles. Certainly Stream would be picked up in that, too, because of the proximity of Schaumburg. So I think she's got the right thing. But you make a really good point, Tony, about there are many opportunities for the businesses, but I think sometimes they're just not aware of those opportunities or those resources. So as we've talked about this in previous meetings, I think it would be great if we, again, as a commission, came up with a very, a thorough and robust list of all of the resources available to the businesses, explained what was available from those resources, and provided that perhaps in a packet that they would receive when they were coming in to either make an inquiry about opening a business here or when they're completing their licensing application or their permitting, going through the permitting process. As I think that we've seen this from Mayor Wallace's campaign. One of his campaign strategies is that we were open for business. So I think it would be great if we honored that particular desire that he had.
That's a good point. We have, and I probably should have brought it tonight, but it's for a later item. We do have a business assistance guide that the EDC actually put together. It's a little dated. It's
Great.
about 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
But that's what you're talking about. It's a brochure that I hand out all the
and
time.
again, if
Yeah.
it was available electronically, just as we've talked
it
about
is.
other resources being available electronically. One thing that I do want to, I don't know if everybody's aware of this, Tony brought it up at the meeting with Anjali, is it's called the Illinois Job Credit Program. I had no idea it existed, and because she has 15 employees, she's eligible for this. Tony, would you mind expanding on that so that the other commissioners would be more cognizant
Sure.
of the benefit to our businesses?
Yeah, I believe
Thank
it's a
you.
$2,500 tax credit per new job created. I'm not going to remember the exact date, but either January 1st of 11 or 12 up to a certain date, and it's been extended. It's actually about the best incentive that the state of Illinois offers, considering the fiscal state of the state of Illinois in terms of incentives. Honestly, there's not a real lot of incentives through the
What's that a credit
state.
for?
I'm sorry?
What's that a credit for?
It's for a new job created, as long as it meets certain criteria in terms of pay.
2,500 is a cap.
I'm sorry?
$2,500 you said is a cap, right? Or is for per
Well,
each?
it comes back to the business as a tax credit.
But that's a cap, total cap. I mean, it's not
Right.
for each employment. It's for total.
Right, per job. If you hired 10 people, you could get $25,000 back.
Oh.
It's a one-time
Wow.
incentive. But it's something
That's
that we've been promoting.
So you open a business, you say, I got X number of employees, I meet whatever these criteria I'd like to apply for, and
You have to document it through your whatever tax documents that you would be submitting to the state.
kind of like a rebate.
I'm sorry?
Kinda like
It is
a
like a rebate, right. It has to meet, again, it has to meet certain criteria. I don't remember it all off the top of my head, but it's a minimum pay. I think that equates
That's
to
good.
probably
That's good. I'm
10
sure
or
that's-
12 an hour.
Yeah, I'm sure there must be quite a bit of businesses who would not know this
Right.
and would be eligible with those criteria to
Right.
claim.
Yeah, for
That
those of
would-
you who follow the Discover Bartlett page, I put it on there earlier in January. And so I was looking at it again, and before I posted it on there, I did the task of calling the number on it to see what would happen, because there's some state offices that aren't the easiest to always reach. And the phone rang 2 or 3 times. The person picked up who handles the program and was ready to help me. So
Is that on the website as well, or is this only on the Facebook page?
as of now, it's on the Facebook page.
We gotta drive people to the website.
I'll put a note to add to website.
Hey, Tony, did she happen to mention why she chose the location that she did?
Yeah, I mean, it was specifically to target this area. When I always talk about demographic studies, like if I talk later about the grocery
What's
search.
the location that she's at now versus Route 59 somewhere? She seems to allude in here that she could possibly get more potential customers on Route 59.
It's not exactly the exact type of business that somebody would drive by and stop at, but people seek it out a little bit more. The rents are lower, as you might expect, off of Route 59, and that was one of the considerations as well. But most of their customers seek them out as a service provider. So they're not 100% reliant on visibility from high traffic areas.
I'm
And just Bartlett was
curious.
selected, literally, it could have been, this one could have been Streamwood, or it could have been West Chicago. This was a good distance from the Schaumburg location, that it wouldn't really cannibalize any of their customer base within 5 miles or so of the Schaumburg location. This is like another concentric ring of customers based out of here. And she did look, Jim's right, she looked at the Route 59 location, and it was, the lease was signed
It's
probably
just-
2 weeks before she
It's just
signed.
curious, because she mentioned drive-by traffic on 59. I mean,
Well, every business
a
wants
lot more
greater.
traffic going by, that's for sure, but they're going by at a lot higher speed. I don't know that many people are looking at signs.
That's
you
a good
know,
point.
So,
If you speak to 3 different businesses, one of them will need visibility, one can get away without high visibility, and one won't care at all. Mike Sobel's business, you're not going to see it driving around through Bartlett, but people will seek him out regardless of where it's located.
I think her point's valid, that she needs more advertising to let people know she's in the Bartlett area.
She's
But once
actually-
people know, I don't think it makes any difference if she's located where she is, or if she's located on 59. Once people know she's here, they'll figure out where she's at and get to her.
Right.
It's kind of a word of mouth thing.
Word of mouth.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the
That's what,
neighborhoods.
that's what the
yeah.
Commissioner Tracy did the right thing to get her connected with the people from a school district or somewhere. That would
Right.
be huge, and that would spread.
Right.
I mean,
They
that would-
actually had a tent at Heritage Days in Bartlett Park right by the Lego tent last September, which seemed to work out pretty well.
Well, and she is actually going to start doing more outreach, not just within the community events, but she's going to be timing some of her mailings to different times of testing as well. So, and she said it's a little bit tricky with the different school districts between Schaumburg and even U46, but she's starting to have a better understanding about, specifically about the timing of those.
Did she mention how many total students they have?
She did not give us the census of her clients, no.
Tony, I have a question or two for you based on some of the things Mrs. Gupta said. She mentioned about being required to provide the architectural drawing. Do either you or Jim have any idea for that small space what an architectural drawing might run?
For something that small, any architectural drawing is going to cost money. The very easiest, cheapest ones I've heard maybe will run under $1,000, like $500 or $600, whereas redoing a whole transformation, from one type of business use to another, can cost you $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or more. So that one, that would be one of the smaller jobs. Basically, if I recall, just drew it up to add one room that serves as an office. And I questioned it too afterwards, after the meeting, and was told, now I understand it better. It's for safety concerns, just to make sure things are built the right way. And any build-out has to do that.
That's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, is this one where she requested the visit, or is this when you initiated with her?
A little bit of both. Yeah, she called. They've only been open 1 year, and they've sent me about 4 or 5 things to put on Discover Bartlett already. And the businesses that, send things to me, I request all businesses to. she's pretty good about it. And then she called specifically to ask about, how can I become more involved with the community? We want to help her get involved with it. And she's going to.
I applaud anybody that goes in that corner. It's always fascinating me because that's a weird little corner they have a commercial district. You can't go north, can't go south, can't go east, can't go west. It's Jewel and that strip mall. And yet, when Jewel came in, there was nothing there, and they made it work, and then they put in another one, and that little strip mall goes through different people, but it keeps growing. They can't go anywhere else, but it's an interesting dynamic over there.
It is, and not to go center by center, but the owners of that center are pretty amenable to working with tenants. That's probably the best way I can put it. They're flexible on rents as they can be. During the recessionary period, they were doing their best to work to keep it filled. And it was filled for years and years. Then there were a number of vacancies, like 3 or 4 vacancies at once there from the vacancy report that I probably gave 2 years ago. And they were all filled. The Mathnasium came in, then when Chubby's closed, then Sandwichville came in, and then Sandwichville closed, and the taco place came in. There's the cell phones, or techies came in, and there was a long-standing beauty salon there that closed, and I had 3 calls for new beauty salons within a month, and they filled it. So that one stays pretty filled. I'm going to knock wood.
That's good.
I'd just like to circle back to the comments made in the report and Jeff's comments about the architectural drawings. And what I do remember from that conversation is that she really expressed some frustrations to the length of the process, specifically the architectural review process. And she believed that it was I guess a rather protracted process that actually created the delay of her opening. I think her opening was delayed as much as a month, and it was frustrating in that she had students ready to go into the Bartlett location, and then they were diverted back to Schaumburg for that period of time. So I think that gave her some level of discomfort, and I can't blame her for that. But I think as we go back to some of the initial comments and desires of of our village president to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make it easy for businesses to open. Is that something that should be reviewed eventually, is the architectural review process? I think I remember Sean, who owns TL's, mentioning that during our public meetings as well, and that he reflected that when he opened his Roselle restaurant, he was open very quickly. Village staff seemed to be more interested in making sure that he opened up either on schedule or ahead of schedule. And I've heard from other business owners too that, and I'll paraphrase them, that the process is very difficult in Bartlett. Are these processes that should be reviewed at some point, or is there some way that we might be able to maybe polish our image so that, again, as we're, quote, open for business, unquote, so that we're more welcoming to businesses rather than continuing with a reputation that we're more difficult to work with?
Well, they're doing a revision of the building code right now, and I know that architectural design criteria for build-out is still in there. Now, obviously, that with the building code, that's going to be discussed with the village board committee. If they want to remove it, I think they can. Whether or not the building director is going to recommend that, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that if you're going to take a space and it's already built out and you're not changing it,
right.
I don't think he requires that. But when you go and you take that space and you're going to change the walls and new lighting, putting in different types of, say if you're going to put in like a bathroom or something, I think you kind of get into needing somebody who has the understanding of the codes to design it. And somebody drawing it on the back of a napkin isn't going to cut it. Because that's what people would like to do, to be honest with you. So I think it's a judgment call as to how much is being built in the space. And then I think in this particular case, they added a room or two that wasn't there. So I think that's why.
They added an office. They basically added 2 walls. The bathroom was already intact.
Yeah, so that's kind of the feeling, I think, of the building department. That standard has been in the village for years that I know of. So,
I know anytime electricity is involved, you don't care.
yeah.
Fires inappropriate, running the wires.
If there's a change in the HVAC system and that, so it's in the code. They're updating they're going to the more current. We use the international building code for the most part, and then we have local exceptions. Like one of our local exceptions is we use the state plumbing code. We have that state, and that's the state handicapped accessibility code. Those are exceptions, but the architectural design criteria is in there. It'll be discussed, and whether they take it out or not, I don't think they will. So
I'm not trying to discount the actual necessity for it by any means. We want every building and every business to be safe and per code. I think that Ms. Gupta was expressing the length of time it took for her drawings to be reviewed and ultimately approved.
Now, that's something that we do not do commercial, industrial building plan review in-house. They are sent out to a third-party reviewer. So that, I'm sure, and I know that takes time, and I've heard that before. I don't know if we have anybody in the building department that is certified to do plan review. So, and that's not unlike a lot of other towns. I mean, there's not a lot of certified commercial industrial plan reviewers. We have guys that know how to do residential plan review, but that, to get those certifications, I don't know if we don't have anybody on staff, and whether that's why those third-party reviewers are out there. Now, dealing with that person and getting them on the stick, that's more of an administrative function of the building department. So I don't know how that plays out. I've heard it, I mean. Maybe RFPs need to be sent out for new reviewers then. The problem is there's not many third-party plan reviewers. There's a couple of them. I mean, in the whole Chicago area. It's just not, and they're getting all the, towns that don't have their internal, they're getting them. There used to be a half a dozen or so.
I guess that's the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Was there not enough business to hire somebody to be on staff? Is it that sporadic or what?
It's, they have never had one that I know of.
Is that real common? You said some other towns. Is it like everybody around here does the same thing? Or?
A lot of towns send them to third-party reviewers, yeah. And that's not uncommon. So, we can bring it up with the building department, but I don't know if there's how many there are out there. There used to be 4 or 5, and I think there's only 1 or 2 that do it because of the economy.
It would be interesting to have a benchmark to see what the average length of time was. And again,
I
know
they
that's...
say 10 working days is the review is done. Now, then you get your review done in 10 working days. Now, it's the old adage is, what was the plan like that he's reviewing? You get a guy who there's an architect plan that's just okay, and he has a lot of comments, and then your architect has to revise it. And we do a lot of plan review for commercial industrial buildings, just site plan and engineering. A lot of times they're crap, and you make a lot of comments on them, and the guys get mad, and it's like, well, just look at this. This is the pipe has to connect here, buddy. So you get that going out, and it has to come back in. So that can take a long time. So.
Tony, or Jim, if this woman's architect drawing commentary that required a second revision?
I don't know.
No, I don't know
didn't look
either.
at the plans.
That would have been actually through the building department. Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, it kind of sounds like a very common thing, and they're excited to open business, and here's this one final big obstacle, and, depends on how you want to deal with it, and especially like if you get students ready, it's kind of frustrating, but it's just a necessary evil.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're
Yeah, we'll
not-
talk to them and look
Yeah.
into it. I don't know if there was any extraordinary circumstance here or what, but. you know.
Or perhaps, to even avoid that level of frustration with a future business owner, perhaps, and again, maybe it's already in the application packet, give people an idea of what the timeline looks like ahead of time, so they don't think that this is going to be done in 2 weeks, and it's actually taking 4.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a totally perfect plan, it'll take 2 weeks, and I very rarely see those.
Yeah, but I think you
Yeah,
understand.
it should, I think you should say, yeah, it's going to 10 days for the first review, but count on having a second review, something like that.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the visit, and I hope that perhaps we as a commission can get onto a regular schedule of visiting businesses, especially those that are newer and upstarts, and rather than, as Tony has shared with us in the past, he goes out and he visits some of the businesses that are distressed. Certainly we want to avoid those, but I just can't tell my fellow commissioners how valuable that experience was, not to just meet somebody in town that had a business, but somebody that was taking a genuine interest to really dial back into her community and not just be successful here, but to provide a phenomenal service to us.
I just want to clarify quickly, a lot of them aren't necessarily, some of them are distressed, like I said last month, but if somebody wants to meet with me about something and they call me at 3 o'clock on a Thursday and they want to meet Friday, I'm going to go, meet with them and bring them the information they want. So I don't usually schedule those because it's too many moving parts to try to schedule other people coming on those. People even don't like it when they just get 2 or 3 days notice. A lot of times I do it on an hour notice. So you're right. But we'll try to schedule more of these, where we can sit down for an hour and kind of go over step by step.
Well, I just loved how just how proactive this was, and I think she did. Ms. Gupta did as well.
Are they citizens here, or do they live someplace else?
I didn't ask, so I couldn't. It struck me as that they were
It never
citizens.
matters. It's just always a curiosity. You kind of, I don't know, I guess inside of me, I like when I hear that someone lives here as well as works here, but again, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I've never asked anybody that.
Okay, we can move on to the next agenda item, which would be the EDC work plan for 2014. A couple of pages here of things to look at. Maybe you can give us a brief overview, Tony, so we don't have to get into an in-depth discussion on each item.
I think it would be more appropriate tonight just to say that last month some of the commissioners were asking for more definitive ideas of different things that we did as a commission and of staff. And rather than me going over point by point for this tonight, just to give you an overview of them, I do have comments on a lot of these items, and I'm sure the commissioners do too. What I'm going to propose for now is just to bring this back next month. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit more in depth. But in general, what I want to say is a lot of these have been in every single economic development work plan for many years, and then some of them are new. One of the points is working with Cole Real Estate to market the former Dominick's store. One of them talks about Discover Bartlett Facebook page. So there are some new items that haven't been in there before, and like I said, I think this would be one we can bring back if nobody's opposed to that, or I could comment on a few if you have questions on them tonight. But it would be good to have another meeting perhaps for you folks to look at it and bring some ideas back on it.
I can give a quick just clarification on one of them on the second page.
Sure.
It looks like it's already on there to update the current new business assistance guide.
You know what? That's exactly what Commissioner Smodilla was just saying. There's a little kind of glossy, colorful business assistance guide that the EDC put together, I want to say in 2007. It gives all kind of a step-by-step how to open a business, and it lists out all the phone numbers for all the different agencies that might be able to help you, like a small business development center, or how to call the Secretary of State to get an LLC name and stuff like that. But so the information is roughly the same now as it was then. It just needs a little bit of sprucing up, perhaps, and just those types of documents tend to age. So probably needs a few updates. So that's to answer your question. Yeah, that would, and that's one of the more popular items that I give out, and it is online as well. So are you folks amenable to me bringing this back for further discussion again, so you can look at it? Okay. Yeah.
You have an opportunity to think about things or something you might want to add, subtract, provide more input. So it's a process. And hopefully by that time we'll have the strategic plan done and out too, which is something the board's working on.
I think that business assistance guide, if it doesn't already contain timelines, like Tracy spoke about, would be helpful. Going through the process of how long it's going to take for each step.
That's a good point.
Give a general guideline on what they can expect time-wise.
It would have to be general, because some businesses will, honestly, you hear about the ones that take a long time. There's others that come in 2 or 3 weeks and they're done. There's others that take a year to do build-out, like the Tokyo Steakhouse. But, I mean, so there's you couldn't put in that you can say the time that the plans will be reviewed, like 10 business days, but you can't say, business A might get approved in 2 weeks, and business B might get approved in 3 months. So you do have to put down that, it's subject to, building department review.
I wouldn't want to give them any unreasonable expectations that they think are hard and fast, or then
We'll hone it down
they'll be
as close
disillusioned
as we
even more
can.
when it doesn't come to fruition.
Okay.
Well, I think that, there's also opportunity to kind of build in the expectation from the petitioner as well, on what they need to do to make sure that the process goes as smoothly as possible. And I think that's a good, healthy, interdependent relationship between the business and the municipality.
We always, whenever I meet with a potential business, I strive to give them more information rather than less. I'm very upfront with them about the timing issues. Some have even elected not to move forward because of the timing issues over the years, but that's not unique to Bartlett. I mean, there's special use processes in almost every town for certain uses, but that's something. First, I'll bring you, then next meeting, the copies of the existing business assistance guides, and before we talk about, well, here's the new version, we'll mull it over for a month or two.
Okay, second to last agenda item would be new business. Tony, you want to give us an update on what's going on?
I do. Tonight, what I have before you, hopefully you all have this grocery store update memo that I wrote last week to the village administrator. So that's what I wanted to go over tonight for new business, because the number one question in town is what is going in where the Dominic's was, and what is the village doing to try to fill that space. So, and this, to be honest, even since this was written on the 5th, which was was that Wednesday, there have been a few others contacted. So I'm going to go over it really quickly. I've contacted 13 grocers because each one operates differently. Some of them you speak to a corporate real estate office. Others you speak to, the person whose name is on the grocery store. So I've spoken to different people in different stores. Adding to the difficulty of the site when we're calling people is that Safeway has a valid lease that they're still paying rent on through 2018 for the time being. And also that the poor performance of this particular Dominick store is well known because the Safeway website had the sales figures for all 72 of their stores listed on their website. So people
assume, though, that to blame that on Bartlett and the demographics, or are they open-minded enough to say that, hey, maybe it was part of the way Dominick's ran their business?
I can't answer that because if I spoke to 14 different people, they look at it 14 different ways. So as of last week, the ones I had spoken to were representative of Roundy's, which is Mariano's in this market, Strachan Van Til, which does business as Ultra Foods, Kroger, Food for Less, which is actually owned by Kroger, Tony's Finer Foods, Caputo's, Pete's Fresh Market, another one called the Fresh Market, Walmart, Aldi's, Cermak Fresh Markets, and Valley Produce. So before the Dominic's closed, everybody was talking about Mariano's, and that's what we were focusing on. My calls were all to Mariano's prior to them closing. Without doing a formal poll of everybody, I just heard the name Mariano said about 1,000 times, and nobody else really said. So we were focusing on that's what every town was going after at that point. So what happened, and I mentioned this last month too, I ended up getting to speak to the Mariano's people. What they told me was they ultimately, what their goal was to take the top 10 performing stores. So regardless of weighing the merits of one area or community against another, they were just looking at sales figures on paper. So they didn't take 10 stores, but they took 11. They paid $36 million, and they still have to take over the lease. So they paid $3.27 million per store. That's to acquire all the trade fixtures, essentially, and the location.
Are we looking at other uses for that location other than groceries? We seem to be focusing on another grocery operation going in there, but that's some pretty sizable square footage. Could something else go in there besides a grocery operation?
It's kind of later in the...
Have we been looking at anything else and
that's a good question.
Contacting anybody about anything else?
So far, no. But if I, just even jumping to the very last, part of the memo, there are smaller grocers than 65,000 square feet. So if ultimately what happens, and this is just prognosticating, I'm going to just use Aldi's for an example, as somebody I spoke with. Their prototypical store is 17,000 square feet. So you can do the math. 65,000 minus 17,000 leaves 48,000 square feet. So that would have to, subdivide the space. Maybe not just even for 2 users, it could be 3 or more. And as of this point, my own focus as the staff has been on grocery stores because we have just one in the community now. We want to give people choices, grocery shopping choices within the community. So to answer your question, really I've been focusing on grocers at this point.
You look at every town around, we have 4 gas stations and 1 grocery store for 41,000. Every town around has 3 and 4 times the amount of both.
Right.
How did we get to this spot? I mean, basically, I'm not going to say Bartlett, but we're being driven to shop elsewhere.
The
I mean, I
cutting
think
the-
we're all passionate. We would love to have a grocery store. How do we get somebody to want to be there?
the splitting up of the site to make it smaller has happened before. We used to have a grocery store across the street where Bannerman's is at, and that was a pretty good size. It was originally was Piggly Wiggly, then it was CB's, and then it was like Joe's or something, Finer Foods, and then when that went out, they couldn't find another. The landlord at the time was the Struzner's, and they couldn't find another grocery store, so they took it upon themselves to subdivide the grocery store space and make it in the, I think it was 12,012, and I can't remember the other one. And then they went after smaller tenants. So that could happen with this site, but right now, the grocery stores, most of them that we've been contacting, not all of them want 60-some thousand square feet either.
Too big for them?
Some of them it's too big for.
Yeah.
Like Tony said, all these they'll take a third of it. So the issue you have to deal with is if you get a grocery store in there and they're not taking it all, Safeway has to give up their lease, and they're not giving it up for free. So you got the property owner has to be willing to do something to get them out of the lease if it's going to take a smaller user.
Jerry hit on something, because I've tried to think about, if not grocery, what else? Hardware, well, no, you got Home Depot. Some of these places turn into fitness centers. Well, I don't know. This is kind of a long shot, but and the company's on struggling times now, so I don't know if they do it, but Sears used to pop up their outlets. There's one in Aurora. They had one in Schaumburg. Then they closed it. Then they were going to open another one. It's worth approaching Sears, for their scratch and dent store. I mean, just a shot.
Yeah, the Sears, like the appliance outlet store.
Yeah.
They take a good space. We used to have a Sears across the street, where the medical center
Right.
is.
Even while I worked here, there was still the Sears.
Yeah.
We don't have a Sears in town, but I'll say the things that I hear through people I speak with in the industry, Sears is probably where Dominic's was 4 or 5 years ago.
I got friends
They're
who
more
work at
on the
Sears
way out
corporate.
than on the
They're
way
saying
up.
that Sears is in big trouble.
Yeah,
I mean, when you're closing your main store downtown, it's pretty much a bad sign.
Well, maybe we want to think a little more long-term than a Sears.
Right. I mean,
And then Tony finishes.
okay, thank you. So I had also been calling the Buteras as well, and actually Commissioner Petro helped me get in touch with the Buteras, and they've passed on the site. I wasn't sure if they had a store previously in Bartlett or not, but they emailed that they did right in Bartlett Plaza. People do request Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. I've contacted them annually, just seeing if they'd be interested in the community at all without even being specific about a potential location. They've categorically passed on it time and time again. So those, what I quoted an email from their site selector who I last corresponded with in September, who declined, told me that they're not interested in expanding into this market. So we've also, like I mentioned, contacted Kroger and Food for Less. They've all, without getting into every detail and reasoning, and a lot of them don't give you their exact reasoning. They just say, thank you for contacting us. We're not interested in expanding into this market. The CEO of Strachan Van Til I spoke with also gave me the same type of information. Said they had you got to also keep in mind a lot of these grocers very meticulously plan their expansion. We want to open one store this year, one store the next. They're not ready to just start taking, empty grocery stores wherever they find them. So that was one, Strachan Van Til, that said, we've already programmed out our expansion for the next several years, not really looking at any of these sites at this point. Speaking with Robertino Presta, who's the CEO of Caputo's, cited near proximity of their Lake Street Hanover Park store. And same thing, Dominic Laspisa and Tony Ingrafia are the two gentlemen that own Tony's Finer Foods, and they basically cited the same thing. They have a store probably 4 or 5 miles from where we're sitting, over on Barrington Road. The owner of Pete's Fresh Market reviewed the Bartlett site and deemed it too far north for their distribution capabilities. A lot of these conversations I have, people talk about their distribution network. How far do they want to drive their produce? How much is it going to cost them extra in their distribution costs? So some of them just don't have interest in expanding into this particular market as a whole. It's not Bartlett, but maybe the whole surrounding area they're not looking at expanding into. I've spoken with the vice president of Valley Produce, who we've basically emailed several times back and forth. I'm trying to get them to review the site once again. That's kind of a smaller fresh market type grocer. They have 3 locations. Site selector for Walmart said they've considered Bartlett for years. Jim and I have had communications with them periodically over the years. They noted that they're not looking for any of the former Dominic sites at this point, but they do have a newer concept that they really are only using in the city at this point in Chicago. It's called a neighborhood market, because a typical Walmart can go 150 to 250,000 square feet. If anything, they're too big for this site. But they said that they might be able to consider it in future years for the neighborhood concept market. They have their expansion plans for 2014 all scheduled already. And then finally, we've had contact over the years with Aldi's. They've looked at a number of sites throughout the village, and as I mentioned earlier, they would require only 17,000 square feet. So that would require willingness on the shopping center owner's part. And I've spoken with them last week, and they are willing to work with somebody. Of course, they're willing to work with somebody to subdivide the space. And also they'd have to work with Safeway, which might not be as willing at this point to break apart any part of their leases. I can't speak for Safeway. They're less communicative than dealing with the shopping center owner. So I also, in summary, I spoke with the owners of the center. It's owned by a real estate investment trust called Cole Real Estate, and they again noted that Safeway still has a valid lease through 2018. I suspected it was 2017, but it's actually 2018. And what their focus is to recapture the space, to at some point be able to take control of their own space again so they can concentrate on leasing it out from their end rather than directing grocers to Safeway to submit a bid, on the entire site. And I want to add a few more because Commissioner Sobel had emailed me an article about yet another new grocery concept called Fresh Time, spelled like the herb thyme, Thyme, and I've contacted their real estate people just to pitch the site as well. And then, not specifically for this, but I ended up having a conversation with somebody from a grocer called Save-A-Lot last week, and that was one of the few times that I've heard, people ask about demographics, and in this case, our demographics are twice as high as what they want. They want to go into an area where the median household income is 40 to 50,000, not 80 to 90,000. And they're very serious about that. I questioned how serious they were about that, and that's a hard and fast rule where they really are a very much a discount grocer. And that was their answer anyway. They took a look at our demographics and said that they're too high for a Save-A-Lot store. So I've actually now spoken with 15 different grocers, which is probably about the most of any community. But still, we'll be contacting more. Haven't heard back from all of them.
Yeah, can I just have you put a couple more on the docket? I mean, this is kind of expanding outside of the consumer grocery concept, but there are two, they're food distributors, so certainly, probably the blueprint of the store would be attractive. One is Gordon Food Service.
Yeah, GFS.
The other one is Market Day. And they seem to have their, the need for, warehouse and distribution space, yet they still appeal to the household consumer. So they're kind of an interesting hybrid.
That's worth a shot. Yeah, I
and
know there's a
Gordon
GFS in Schaumburg.
Yeah, right out on Gulf Road. And I think they're, that's the only location that I know of in the suburban area.
Market Days used to have, Market Days, they had their big center over in Wooddale there, and then they had a store over on Roselle at Schaumburg, but that whole plaza is gone. I'm almost thinking that they're, are you familiar with Market Days, Howard?
I am. I'm trying to think of where I've seen it.
They
That's
don't have a
Wooddale?
lot of stores. Usually it's through businesses or primarily church and church functions, but they do occasionally put together. And
Yeah, they've got a
it's a-
retail site.
I'm almost wondering, are they getting away from it? Because I liked the retail sites. I found out about them through church and through business. But I like going, it was like a Sara Lee outlet, which is also another potential. But I seem to see that kind of closing too. A lot of Sara Lee Hostess outlets, they're kind of going by
Those
the
are
wayside
closing
too.
too.
Well, they've divested a lot of their food service.
Yeah.
The brand has.
Yeah.
Those are two good ones. I'm writing it down. I'll try to get through to the appropriate parties there at both of those.
And just another one would be Schwann's. It's SCHWAN.
NNS.
Yeah.
I know Schwann's. I see
and
their
I
truck.
think they've done a lot of,
Yeah. They're not grocers now. They do home delivery. It's kind of like Peak
right,
Pie.
but as a
Yeah.
distribution site, that might be appealing to them, especially if they're considering any kind of, route expansion in this area, since it's grown significantly since
they go-
started their routes.
I've seen one of their distribution centers, just so you know, they go to like industrial type parks where the rent would be more like $2 or $3 a square foot rather than 12 or 15,
Sure.
20.
It's surprising. I was well familiar that food chains do plan their real estate long in advance. When Dominic's, inevitably, I saw it come, most people that pay attention to that industry saw it coming, but the land grab for the stores is almost more surprising. First, this guy grabbed a block, and if my most current information, there's a lot of websites out there for grocery and real estate. I think there's only 4 left, and we're one of them. And I think the other 3 are like in really icky areas. Like all the rest of them have been picked up, and you start to wonder what's wrong with Bartlett. South Elgin can have business. Carroll Street, town's further out, town's bigger, town's smaller. It seems like such a good area. You wonder what's wrong.
I think there's more available than 4. I think it's in the 20s, I believe. There was
After Caputo's bought all the, because
Yeah.
Caputo's just bought a big chunk of them.
Caputo's, I don't know the exact number, 4 or 5 of them they bought.
Yeah.
And there was an interactive map on cranes. Residents emailed me almost, several times a day about the Dominics, and somebody had emailed a link to a map that was on cranes, coded by color of who took what, and purple was the one that not taken, and there were at least 20 of them. I've spoken to 3 other towns have called me for my list just in the last week of who I've called, and one was Is it Woodridge or Wooddale? It was Woodridge. One was Glen Helen, I think.
I just came up with a name
Yeah.
for you, just as you said Wood. Out in Carpentersville, there's a chain out of Wisconsin called Woodman.
Woodman's I contacted. I didn't mention it yet. They want minimum 250,000 square feet. Yeah.
Wouldn't it make a great bowling alley?
It would.
You know, it
Brunswick
might end up
lanes.
being
It would make
being
a
that.
It'd make a great bowling alley.
Yeah, just to
Brunswick
answer the
lanes.
first question that Jerry asked, so far, on my side, I've been completely focusing on grocers. You know, big, small, just trying to give people at least a choice between at least 2 grocers within
The
Bartlett.
restaurants would love to have a bowling alley there.
That'd be cool.
If it's not
Overwatch
leased for a
would love
period of time, I'm sure they're going to start looking at alternate uses. I've said it before at these EDC meetings. They have one of the top brokers from CB, Richard Ellis, represents that shopping center. As a matter of fact, any of the nationals that you mentioned, she's one of my degrees of separation from almost anybody. So they're pretty actively marketing it. We're marketing it from a village side. The brokers are also reaching out to people. I don't know how much Safeway is reaching out. I couldn't answer that. They have the website, and, you know, they're trying to get those off their books. That's a corporate problem for them to have empty grocery stores month after month that they're paying rent on.
But if I understand you right, it sounds like they're content to just continue to pay their rent and property taxes.
For the time being. I mean, they closed at the end of December. This is 2 months' rent they've paid.
I mean, in the real world, that property is no more our problem than Gorski is our problem. It's just we care. Is that
Right, we care, and also that there are grocers that are buying out the Dominic's leases, so we want to make sure they're at least all considering the Bartlett site. Everybody I've spoken with was already reviewing the Dominic sites, for the most part. What I got, a lot of them, I asked them to review it again. Yeah. But I wanted to update the EDC on our efforts, and also to get ideas like GFS on Market Day also.
You know what? Maybe when it sits empty long enough, hopefully not as long as Gorski, but, you know, maybe Safeway, when they want to say, we want to get this off our books, they make it a more appealing piece of property, and somebody that already said no changes their mind, says, yeah, maybe we'll think about it.
Right. I'm going to use the former Nescafe, soon-to-be Tokyo Steakhouse as an example. That was a high-visibility, large vacancy for quite a while, and we spoke about it at the EDC frequently. So that one went from $2 million asking price to 1.8 to 1.6 to 1.4 to 1.2 to $1 million sold. So, I mean, they had to go for 2.5 years of vacancy, dropping their price. And by the way, I called the owner today, and he's trying to open in the next week or 2. So we'll see. But that's his goal.
Good luck to them, just in the middle of this winter.
It's a rough time to be doing construction, but they started in July. Wow. Their construction, I might add, is extensive.
Let me say, this is an excellent work that Tony has done, following up practically, I would say, at least to quite a few. I mean, all the names that we can think of,
He's
is
hit 'em all.
reached out, and in fact, we are finding it difficult now to find out the names also, where
Yeah.
to now, to whom to. So, great job done, and I guess
Thank you.
we should also be doing whatever names that can come up with us, as you has already suggested, and as Commissioner Petro already introduced. So I think we'll keep on making efforts, and you've done a good job.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to keep calling people till people keep coming and looking at it, and eventually somebody will locate there. That's the plan.
Okay, well, I think if anybody has any ideas about any potential people that might want to go in there, feel free to contact Tony via email and let him know what you think. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the update, Tony, on the new business.
You're welcome.
That concludes the agenda for tonight. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make one.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned.
I didn't catch the motion and second to adjourn.
Second, we didn't get a second. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Now we're adjourned.
Thank you.